Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and actually about how emotional intelligence, how developing of your own emotional intelligence can help you be a better leader and help you create an incredible life. I decided to invite for that topic Vicky Henderson, who is an awesome specialist in the field. She is a certified NLP master coach and timeline therapy master practitioner. She is also a person who helps people become better leaders, builds their performance up to the roof, boosting their confidence, and live the joyous, positive life. And by the way, she's also a godmother to my podcast, Stand Up and Stand Out, the Confidence Podcast for women entrepreneurs, managers, and coaches. Hello, Vicky. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you today on the interview. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very well over here in the UK. It's all good.
Awesome. When I have to admit that when I hear somebody saying emotional intelligence, I'm immediately thinking, "Ooh, Vicky, I know her, and I know she's great at that, and she can help you out with this." But I also very often hear people not exactly understanding what it is. And very often having a misconception on that, saying like, "Oh yeah, I have plenty of emotions and I'm okay with that. Is that emotional intelligence?" I'm like, is it? Is it not? Can you tell us a bit more about what this emotional intelligence, what that mystery emotional intelligence is?
Well, it's not really a mystery. It's maybe the title that's more of a mystery than everything else. So your IQ is very similar to your EQ. So you've got your intelligence and your emotional intelligence. And your IQ is fixed at about the age of 15. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't develop skills and knowledge, because we all know that we can develop skills and knowledge. But if you were to take an IQ test, it's not going to vary that much after the age of 15 in your life. Now, your EQ, your emotional intelligence, is dynamic. And it sits alongside, and it can have highs and lows, and you can actually develop and work on it. So what is it? It's broken into 4 parts. The first part is your self-recognition, which is your ability to recognize your emotions, your ability to recognize the impact your emotions have on yourself. Okay. The second part of that is called self-management. Now, this is the big bit that most people find really tricky. That's your ability to manage those emotions, particularly the negative ones and the impulses, in a constructive way. That's the ability, that's the difference between flying off the handle at anger with somebody just like that, to saying, I'm feeling angry, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, but I'm going to respond in a constructive way.
So this is actually the part that is mainly to be worked on for people.
For the majority of people.
Yeah,
I see plenty of clients.
Yeah,
but I do see plenty of clients who have come to me who were so shut down that they can't even identify their own emotions.
Oh, even this first step is creating lots of trouble, because the first step will be actually naming the emotion and understanding whether I'm happy, I'm furious, I'm excited, whatever it is happening in us, to be able simply to give the name and define what it is.
Yeah. And particularly in the UK, but I know it's across the world, we've always been told, stiff upper lip, don't show your emotions. Well, if you're told not to show your emotions all the time, you hide them and you can't identify them. And I'm here to tell you that good, bad, fine, and okay, which are our common 4 choices for how we feel, are not emotions.
I think it's like what I've noticed, especially like I've been working with people from UK and from Ireland, for example, for quite a long time, and I have a feeling that just asking how are you, it's just a kind of polite way to acknowledge a person instead of even saying hello. But actually, we don't mean to even ask a question, and to be honest, we actually have no idea how to respond to that question.
Absolutely. So everyone just says, I'm fine.
Which is what it is.
Rubbish.
Exactly. It's like each person, for me,
you might be fine, but you could say, oh, I'm really happy. But people
Yeah,
won't
just to
say that.
give it a bit more. Give it a bit more.
Yeah.
I'm actually the person who's replying in a full sentence. So I remember when my first boss ever was Irish, and he was coming in the office and just running through the people and saying, "How are you? How are you? How are you? How are you?" And the moment he was ending up at my desk and he was saying, "How are you?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's awesome day. I had actually a great feeling coming here in the office because we will have great meetings, and I'm super happy to meet our new clients." And he was like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And then I was, politely coming back, "How are you?" "Fine." And he's gone. This means that you can fix that. You can
Can,
fix
but that's
and
not
help
all
people.
emotional intelligence is.
All
There's
right,
another
there's
side
still
to it.
more.
Yes.
Come on, tell
That's
me
the
more.
self side.
All right.
There's then the social side. There's your social recognition. So, can you recognize emotions in other people? Are you empathetic? Can you pick up on that sort of thing? And then there's your social management side, which is how you show up in public. It's how you manage yourself and other people in a situation. And there are two types of people, one that I see a lot of, particularly women, not just women, but particularly very emotionally able to recognize their own emotions, very emotionally able to recognize other people's emotions, highly empathetic, with absolutely no self-management. Well, if you have no self-management, what you're going to end up doing is taking on everybody else's stuff, and you will carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Now, I'm here to tell you that does not have to be that way. Being empathetic is absolutely crucial to life, particularly as a female leader. Any leader needs empathy, but we as women, we're naturally empathetic, but you do not have to take everyone else's stuff on. That's where your emotional management comes into it, where you're able to say, be empathetic, but almost put like a barrier up to protect yourself. So there's all sorts of things at play here. And the last session, that social management section, that's going to dictate your ability to influence, to be a leader, to coach people, to train people, to develop people. If you struggle in that area, you're going to struggle in the big wide world, particularly of work.
So actually, the fact of just the beginning and recognizing our own emotions is just a little drop in the sea.
Yes.
It's the moment through this emotions management, the emotional intelligence, this social part, we can actually become, instead of being just a manager with the stempel of the manager, we can actually start becoming true leaders and people who can not only manage the processes, because for that we just need the knowledge about a certain topic that we're doing in our lives, in our jobs, but in order to really help people and for our teams to be better, stronger, more efficient, we need to first work it out on our own.
We do, absolutely. And there's been a lot of research around this. And basically, Daniel Goleman, who's a bit of a guru in the area, I love his stuff. He says that in any job, whether you're on the shop floor of a factory or you're the CEO, your emotional intelligence counts for 85% of your success.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. In leadership, he says that it counts for almost everything. That doesn't mean that, you can get to a leadership position without having that 15% of knowledge and skills. You absolutely have to have them. But what's going to make you stand out from the crowd is your emotional intelligence. So if you imagine you've got a team of guys working on the shop floor building cars, maybe you've got some girls in there too. There's going to be one person within that team who rises to be the leader, whether they are in a position of leadership according to the hierarchy of the company, or whether that's just naturally the person that comes out. Now, that person, they all probably have a similar IQ and qualifications to get the job, but that person's a little bit more special. That person's the standout. Their level of emotional intelligence is probably higher than everybody else's. And they also, and you need to bear this in mind, whoever the leader is on whatever the hierarchy is in your organization, wherever those leaders are, they might not have the badges, so you have to look out for them. If they're in a negative place, if they're struggling, they're going to poison the whole atmosphere around you. And that's where you as a leader need to be able to say, actually, that person there, we need to work with them, because if we can work with them, we can get everybody else on side.
Would you, as a professional and working with those kind of issues, would you be able to help out companies find those leaders, find those people who are more I would say more natural leader? Because we put on managerial positions, on the position that gives us the power, people who have extreme knowledge, but their emotional intelligence is a bit crooked. Can we help that person who's already on the managerial position? And the second question would be like, shouldn't we actually have somebody maybe like you in the company to look a bit around and see like this person, that person, and that person, we can invest in them because they will actually change the mentality of our company, because they have this natural talent to manage their emotions and understand also the feelings and emotions of others.
Absolutely. And I do work with companies doing this. So I coach quite a lot of middle managers, particularly in who have been identified as struggling, they want to keep them, they want to develop them, they've maybe been there a long time, but they're prepared to invest in these people. And I think this is one of the big things, that a lot of companies aren't prepared to invest in training. They'll leave a bad manager in place because they don't really want to deal with it. You take your amazing, outstanding salesperson and you make them the sales manager. They're great at selling. Selling is a lone task. They're not necessarily good at people management. So are they the right person for that job, first of all? But secondly, if you're going to put them in that job, train them to do it, give them the skills and knowledge that they need to be able to do it, teach them to be able to have conversations with their staff that are difficult. So how do I do that? I use assessments. I have access to 2 different suites of assessments.
Psychology tests that we need to choose different sentences or something like that.
Similar to that. So I think you took my emotional intelligence assessment, didn't you? So I have a suite of assessments that I use in my coaching, but recently I've trained on another suite of assessments, and they're particularly good because you can put together all of the characteristics that you want in a job. And then you could test everybody against those characteristics, and it will tell you who's best suited. So imagine if you could do that when you're promoting and recruiting, so that you're not getting it wrong. Saves an absolute fortune in mishires and mispromotions.
Yeah, so that's definite.
You know, if you were to put the entire company through an emotional intelligence assessment, which is obviously an expense, but it would give people an idea to understand where they are, how they could improve themselves. One of the big issues in this area is that a lot of people aren't open to it. A lot of people aren't open to this type of thing. They think they're absolutely fine. They think they can't change their behavior. They're not actually prepared to hold a mirror up and be completely honest. And coaching specifically won't work unless the person's totally on board. But certainly there are things that you could do across a whole company that would help you develop and train your staff in a much more effective way.
We spoke a bit about how we can do that in the company's level, but then if there is, like me, I came to you to do the test and we went through that. It was awesome, by the way. And I really liked that test. And I actually built up my own confidence, even looking out of at the outcome of that one. But looking at that, if the person has some issues on the way while doing the test and while doing their own assessment, how can you help them? And how actually through knowledge and development of the emotional intelligence, can you build them up? Can you help them build their self-esteem? Can you help them boost their confidence? Is it even possible to do it through that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I do. That's what my whole business is about. A lot of people say, where are you? Where are you now? And actually, people really struggle to put the finger on where they are, what their current situation is. So what the assessments do, I like to say, is they make the invisible visible. They say that what you don't know, you can't fix. So what the assessment allows me to do is by not being able to predict the outcome because you don't know why the questions are being asked and there's no wrong answer, you answer what's right for you. And because the way they're developed, these assessments, they're very, very skillful at absolutely being spot on. And I think you'll agree from your assessment I don't remember you arguing the point with me on many things. But what they allow us to do is to say, okay, this specific area is troubling you in this way. And suddenly people go, oh, absolutely. I hadn't been able to put my finger on it, but there it is in black and white in front of me. The other good thing about it is it allows us to look at people's strengths. So people are often very hard on themselves, particularly with low confidence and low self-esteem. Okay. So they think everything is wrong. But actually, when you go through that assessment, it puts it in percentage points and it will show you where you're really strong, but it will also show you what I wouldn't say weaknesses, where your areas for development are. And what I would also say is, say you've got 50% in one section, maybe in confidence, you've got 50% of undeveloped potential. And it's all about looking for that potential. Where can you make those tiny incremental changes to increase your potential? And that's about increasing your self-esteem and your confidence. And when I work with clients, that's what we take as the kind of top level. But then we have a really good dig around through the NLP and timeline therapy that we spoke about earlier. And I also have a different coaching model called navigational conversations, which is slightly more cognitive, so not quite as fluffy. So some people don't really, they kind of push back against the fluffy stuff. I've got lots of different,
something really that is
lots of different tools in the box. Absolutely. And what we do is, if you imagine that you've got a dandelion, okay? Now, we all know that if you cut the leaves off the dandelion, eventually it grows back again. They just, you can't get rid of the damn things. And what we would do is, rather than cutting the leaves off it all the time, which is what a lot of stuff does, a lot of coaching and things might do, because of the NL3 and the timeline therapy, we can tweak the whole root out and just get rid of it. And it's about, and you know, because you're training to be a hypnotherapist, it's about really looking for that root cause. Once you can get rid of the root cause, everything else kind of starts to fall into place. So I know it works because I was that toxic leader. I wouldn't even say I deserved the label of leader. I was that toxic manager. I did pollute the entire pool around me with negative shit. And we were in a negative situation, but I definitely made it worse. And I went through the same coaching that I now deliver, and it changed my life forever, which is why I now do it. So when people say to me, oh, I'm not sure it's going to work, I'm like, it definitely does. You just got to believe in it. I am the living proof that it works, but you have to believe in it 100%. You have to believe it will work, because as Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And it's exactly like that. If you don't believe the coaching will work, it won't work. But if you believe it will change your life, I can guarantee you it will change your life.
Now, that's honestly my beloved quote. And this is something that when I started discovering coaching, back in I think 2013, 2014, when I was going through my own change, I realized that very often I was actually believing in the fact that I can't. And of course that was happening, all those things, and they were like the proof of that. The moment I shifted the way of thinking and approaching things in my life, then all those things with my new attitude of yes, I can, changed also the things happening around me. Suddenly I was able to do so many things. I was able to change so many things in my life, improve my life. And I'm also the living proof of my coaching process that I went through myself. Becoming a coach as well is a kind of, the additional thing that I can always say, like, okay, I know exactly where you are because I've been there. And I think that's the most valuable thing for people who are coaches, to say that I've been there, I've done that, I know exactly what you feel, and my process was this. So I'm the living proof that this coaching, this process, this test, and further work afterwards works because I've been there. And now I can say that I'm not fine, I'm actually happy, I feel awesome, I feel not so good today because something's cranky, hurting in my back or something. You're able to be simply more honest with yourself and with the people around you. You already mentioned it, that actually the process of emotional intelligence and changing changing that and the way you work with people on that topic is helping them to deal with those demons of the past, deal with those limitations that we have in the past, how that can actually help us create what's coming.
Basically, between the age of 0 and 7, you're a sponge. Okay. And you're also learning everything. So everything that's going around you, you will just be sapping up. So if there's a lot of negative emotion in the family, you'll sap that up. If there's a lot of anxiety, you'll sap that up. If you're lying in your crib and you want to be picked up, you can't speak. So what do? You scream the house down. That's your first understanding of what frustration is. Now, frustration is basically just a different word for anger. That's your first understanding of it. So when you get to about the age of 2, this time you can actually move a bit more. So when you get angry, and anger is basically not getting what you want. If you don't get what you want, you get angry. When you're about the age of 2, you'll throw a temper tantrum and lie down on your back and scream and kick your feet in the supermarket aisle and totally humiliate your mother. Okay. By the time you've got to maybe 7 or 8, you can verbalize a little bit more and you will shout and scream. By the time you've got to 13 or 14, you've maybe realized that, okay, in the past, I've shouted and screamed when I didn't get what I want, but now actually I've got more vocabulary, so I can be quite vicious and nasty. And then we go through life and we build up a response. So you feel frustrated, you feel you haven't got what you want, you didn't get your own way. So you refer back to the past. What did I do last time? Oh, last time I did this. So you do it again and you repeat it. And then along the way, you might have a major event that really sticks out. But what we do is we're building up this memory bank in our filing cabinet up here, so that when we get to this situation, I'm not getting what I want, we go into the filing cabinet, pull out the file on, I didn't get what I want. What did I do before? That's what I did before. And you revert back to it. And you get into this cycle of this is what I have to do, which is flying off the handle and not controlling yourself. So what you can do by working on specifically in things like hypnotherapy and NLP, timeline therapy, is you can't change the past, but you can change how you feel about the past. So if you're still carrying around anger, for example, on a memory from something that happened in the playground when you were 6 years old, is that actually serving you any purpose? Is it going to resolve anything? Does the other person still feel angry about it? Probably not. You need to let go of that. So it's about all this emotional baggage that we carry around. And I tell a story in one of my talks that I arrived at my first coaching course with 32,000 kilos of emotional excess baggage. And I left 3 days later with a small clutch bag. It's about parking the past. You've got to let it go. If you imagine if you're on monkey bars, okay, to move to the next monkey bar, you've got to let go of what's behind you, the one behind you. And that's what you have to be able to do. If you get bogged down in the past, you can't move forward. So what I do in my coaching is I coach people and give them a toolkit so that they can manage their emotions going forward in a different way. We kind of wipe the slate clean and they say, okay, now I can make better choices. So everything I do is forward focused, but we have to get rid of what's holding us back from the past, those nasty self-limiting beliefs, mental blocks, frustrations, etc., so that we can move forward. And what we need to be able to do is focus on what you want in the future and not get bogged down in what's happened in the past.
So simply kind of cleaning up a bit the emotional slate that we have based on what's happened.
Emotional spring clean.
Yeah. Because there are different things that, they are simply embedded in our head. And if we would still keep on doing the same things as we were doing, when we were, 5, 7, 14, and end up with going to our managerial position with the attitudes of like, you just shut up and listen to me. This will not work.
No,
this will not work. And in the end, you're actually getting more frustrated yourself with your anger, with your own anger, And then you're actually spreading this frustration all around. This is definitely something that we all should work on, and not only on the level of the companies, but actually on the personal level, because it could help us a lot to change the way we can live our lives. We would be much more calmer. There will be less stress. And then I'm looking at the fact of women and mothers. I'm a mother. My son is we're about 4.5 years old right now, and I know that all my emotional baggage that I have, I'm putting it on him right now, and that's something that I don't want to do. That's why it's also I'm working on me, on my I do the work for myself to be able to simply give it to another generation in a bit different packaging. I had an amazing childhood, but there still were things that kept me blocked for quite a long time. What I see, especially right now, and maybe also with the situations that we have around us, with children, with teenagers, they tend to be more tense because of being under the lockdown in different places in the world. It's on a different level, but still it's not a natural environment that we used to know, we used to have. Could you actually tell me if that kind of thing, this emotional intelligence, doing the test and actually moving further with therapy in the way, with coaching, with those sessions, could that help also the teenagers who are right now in those anger states, and I'm like, they're frustrated because they can't get out of the home, or they're not seeing their friends on the daily basis?
It can help everybody. I do a lot of speaking around the concept of personal leadership, which is you need to be able to lead yourself. And there's 3 different areas to personal leadership. There's your current self-image, which is where you are now, which is the ability to look at what are your self-limiting beliefs, what are your mental blocks, and also what do you believe you deserve in life? What do you believe you're entitled to in life? But I prefer the word deserve. A lot of people don't believe they deserve very much, and actually that's holding them back. On the other side is your self-esteem, which is your personality. What are your areas for development? What are your strengths? But also in this one, I always say to people, how much on a scale of 1 to 10 do you like yourself? And how much on a scale of 1 to 10 do you respect yourself? Because those are really big. And on my website, there's a free self-coaching package that you can do. And then the top part of this is your future self, your ideal image. So where do you want to be? What person do you want to be? What do you want to look like? What do you want to sound like? How do you want to think? How do you want to talk in 6 months, a year? That's nothing to do with your business. It's nothing to do with your career. It's not to do with your relationship. It's about you. And you can work with that with anybody. So I do a lot of work with teenagers at the moment. My youngest client was 11 when I started with her. She's now 12. And I actually have a whole program for teenagers that's grown out of the pandemic because there is so much pressure. And it's a very interesting world being a kid these days, because you're getting projections from your parents, from the news, from everyone around you. So if everyone's anxious, they're projecting that onto you. So what do? Oh, I'm really anxious. If everyone's really stressed around you, they're projecting it. I'm really stressed. By the time you're sort of in the, I don't know, in the sort of 8 to 12 section, that's where you model, that's where you copy. So if you see everything going on around you in a stressed and anxious and slightly bizarre way, you're going to start copying that behavior. And you're picking up on all those emotions all the time. By the time you're a teenager, you're kind of feeling your own way. So you're trying to find out, and you're going to challenge your family values a little bit, but then you're also going to start to be influenced by social media, really dangerous, by your friends, by all sorts of other stuff. And teenagers today are probably under more pressure externally from all sorts of being bombarded by tech and info than we ever were. And I struggled as a teenager. I mean, God, you can understand why we have the situation we do with this heightened anxiety and self-harming, because they're just teenage brains, basically from the age of about 10, a teenage brain starts to develop. So it stops being a child's brain and it starts to develop into an adult's brain. And there's a lot of disconnection that goes on. Maggie Dent is brilliant on this. She explains it so well. Certain bits of the brain kind of stop working so that they can grow. And the most key bit for teenagers is that it's their ability to manage their emotions that becomes disconnected. So where before they might have bobbled along, when their brain starts to develop, suddenly they'll experience extreme highs and extreme lows. They'll have risk-taking behavior. They won't think as much about what they're saying and the impact on other people, hence they're so vile to each other. And amazingly, this can go on until 23 to 25 in women and 26 to 28 in men. So if you have a man-child in his late 20s, you literally have a man-child. His brain probably hasn't finished developing into an adult brain. If you've got a girl who's struggling into her mid-20s, it's the same. She hasn't developed her full adult brain. Her reasoning, her ability to manage her emotions isn't there. And that's why we have to be there for them, because it used to be much lower. But for some reason, as society's gone on, that development has been delayed, which is why we see more kids, I believe, living at home, which is why we see them, being less adult, less able to take responsibility at a far later period than maybe some of us did. And that's what it all amounts to. It's being able to take responsibility for your own emotions, for how you behave, how you respond to others. And once you can do that, and there are teenagers out there that do it because I'm working with them, once you can get to that point, suddenly life looks very, very different. But it's just about helping them understand that if they have these highs and lows, it's normal. There's a brilliant book called Blame My Brain.
Oh.
The Amazing Teenage Brain. And it explains to teenagers what's happening in their brain as they're going through adolescence. It helps them understand. So there's loads of help out there for both parents and teens to help understand what's happening. But I believe you can work on emotional intelligence. There's all these journals and things for even little kids now. That's all working on their emotional intelligence. It's getting them to understand their emotions, how to manage their emotions. Is thumping your sister when you're really angry appropriate? No. What other options have you got? Okay. Yes, I used to resort to thumping my sister because I wasn't as verbally able as she was to torture her. So she would torture me verbally, I'd hit her. I didn't have the skills not to, but we can develop that in our kids. You can work on it from a very, very young age, but you've got to be in the right mindset yourself.
I think we so far we neglected talking to our kids about their own emotions, and that's something that it's like we always say, like, oh yeah, he's just the tempered child, tempered, possessed, whatever you call it, however you name it. But in reality, it is that they don't understand what is happening in them. I've also noticed that there are more and more books that help even little kids to express their emotions. There is an amazing series. I don't remember the author, but it is a French series about a little unicorn who has, the rainbow hair, and depending on how he feels, his color of the hair changes.
Ooh.
And the book is very, very tiny, but the book explains the emotion, explains where the emotion is coming from, and in the end it gives actually a breathing exercise with waving hands this way, that way, or jumping or something like that. But it gives the solution to coming back to having a rainbow again and being the rainbow unicorn.
Brilliant.
Right? This is really, really awesome thing. And I think that this is the kind of, the first steps to actually help children to manage their emotions. And then what you're saying, making a next step and actually saying, yes, I need help. Yes, I would like to do something with my life. I don't want to be this vicious sister, brother, whatever, that instead of saying something, they tend to, punch, beats their sibling. It is very important to have a person like you around in life, and that the person is able to help them name the emotion and understand the emotions from others, and also not to take the emotion inside. As women, we are much more exposed to that, because the empathy that we have inside naturally, as you already mentioned earlier on our conversation, it is something that really is often not helping us feeling okay with ourselves, because we start to take the emotions of others as our own.
I would like to say at this point that nothing can make you feel any way at all. It's how you choose to feel. So if you're choosing to feel anxious watching the television, you need to be aware that you're choosing to feel anxious and then work out why. The obvious solution is don't watch it. But everything we do, we choose. Every response that we give to people, the way we feel, is a choice. Now, some people might feel they don't have many choices available to them, but once you understand that you can choose how you feel and give you a toolkit to start choosing other emotions and other ways of feeling, it's massive. And I think coming back to what you were talking about, understanding and being able to name the emotion, with kids these days, a great tool. We've got all these fantastic emojis. Start with 5 or 6 emojis that give a range of feelings, happy, sad, angry, whatever the other feelings are that you want to focus on. So have the emoji so the child can see it, have the word underneath, and just say to them, how are you feeling? They point at that one and say, okay, you're feeling sad today. And then start to get them to understand, okay, this is how I feel because I've identified with the picture. The word that goes with that is sad. Now, even up to some of my adult clients, I give them an emotions wheel because they can't express their own emotions. I give them a wheel, and when they start to look at the words, they go, oh, actually, yeah, that one resonates with how I'm feeling. But if you can't identify your emotions, it's very, very difficult to kind of understand them and then move forward from them.
Awesome. I think you just packed us with plenty of information. Your website will be definitely in the description. So anybody who wants to reach out to Vicky, definitely guys do it. Seriously. This is something like I remember me doing the full test with you and then doing the evaluation. And even out of that, I already managed to boost my self-esteem, because it very often, you might not feel, you might say that you're actually not that type of person, but then realize that you're actually much further and much better with your emotional intelligence than you actually thought about that. Thank you, Vicky, so much for today, for the conversation. That was really, really amazing to have you here. And thank you all for being around and for listening to us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Lovely. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And again, we meet next time. Bye.